As many of you know, we are working on our map, and one of the things that we posited was the idea that Antarctica was actually split and in two physical locations. And lo and behold, Jaron, being the amazing researcher that he is, dug this picture out of God knows where he got it. But as you can see, it has the base construct of what Cami and I were starting with, in this background grid. And like our version 1.0 map, it's almost identical to the 1.0 map, but the problem with the 1.0 map, again, is this traversal from Santiago to Sydney. We know that we have to be able to do it within 13 hours because they have flights that do that. So it's amazing that this is even out there, and also that it's using a very similar grid pattern, but it also is not realistic to assume that the powers that be are ever going to let us have any type of map that shows the reality of the Earth. So even though this particular map has a stunning similarity, especially in the background grid pattern, I can tell you right away there are a few major issues with this map. But the thing I found about it was amazing is that they took, and just like we said was a necessary step, it looks like this prime meridian line looks like it's been shifted to go through Giza rather than Greenwich, for one. For two, we're showing Antarctica split in two main sections, left and right, very interesting also. And we have these grid lines that are actually showing what the magnetic compass would read if you were actually tracking it. And of course, when you look at this, it does put Hawaii back up here off the map. And it really has a lot of similarities to Cami's and my 1.0 map. Now, when we first showed our map to Jaron's reaction was, well, we seem to have some problems still with flight times and navigation. And he made the suggestion of essentially doing something that should have been almost obvious to us because of what we know about the satanic nature of the powers that be. And one thing that they absolutely do is they reverse things, or they flip them upside down, or invert them, or whatever. And so one of Jaron's suggestions when he was kind of nonchalantly talking about this is like, it might work better if you actually flip this upside down and then maybe reverse it from side to side, and that's going to bring these lines of force in a little bit closer, which are going to bring the probability and possibility and reality of being able to make the Santiago to Sydney flight come together. And sure enough, when Cami did that, we looked at each other and went, wow, that's amazing. But the reason I'm showing you this, guys, is because somebody else has obviously been thinking along these lines. And although this is not accurate, this is a very, very similar construct to what we're trying to achieve. And I'll even go so far as to show this, which, as you can see, when you look at this, and our grid in the background, which was derived completely separate of this, you see a stunning similarity in the two. Now this one has been reversed, and we are still in the process of plotting the continents, the cities down the coastline. East and west are reversed. Now I also want people to remember that when I say that the satanic powers that be reverse things, turn everything upside down, one good example of that is our geographic North Pole is literally our magnetic South Pole, and vice versa. Okay. Beyond that, we know that what they're calling the South Atlantic anomaly is not commensurate with a pole, and even they will admit that the South Pole is much closer to 60, I believe, 7 degrees south. Okay, and again, south is north, north is south, whatever, and it's all meant to confuse, very intentional. So this is a kind of a flip over of the grid system, and when we plot these continent lines, and I know you probably can't see this very well, but like I said, a larger map is coming. You can see Cami's scribblings on here, where he has Juno, or she has Juno, Nome, Bruce. Well, anyway,
No, not
Alaska.
Barrow.
Barrow. Okay.
That's Barrow, Alaska. What these are is they're actual using coordinates, the longitude and latitude coordinates. And on the maps, as I do this, and I'm trying to get the alignment right, what I am doing is I physically go to the coordinates of these places, plot dots, check their sunsets, their sunrises, their visuals, what the distance is between cities, all different things, squish it, redo it again and again on that, trying to get my aspect ratio. So it's very messy, but we're getting really fine-tuned in actually for as messy as it looks, where it's coming along. Doesn't look like it, but again, once I have things lined up right, it's a matter of you can plot in the outline cities of continents and draw the outlines or draw it in.
Right.
Go ahead, Bob.
And also, you'll notice that Hawaii, of course, comes down here along the 180 line because, like you said, when you move the prime meridian from from Greenwich to Giza, that also changes the international date line where the new day would start to Hawaii. And their mythology would be very much in accordance with that idea for sure. So I just kind of wanted to throw this in here. Again, we're still working on it. We've got Amir who's doing a great job in making modifications to these grids. It's very crude right now, but the reason that we have it in this state and are plotting it in this state is because every time we make an adjustment, with another factoring in another part of the magnetic lines of force, it will change the entire construct of the map. So you change one little thing here, it changes everything there, but there will eventually be a sweet spot where everything flies, and I have to tell you, we're very close to that, very, very close to that. So again, this is the crude translation of what we're working on, what you're seeing here, and this is somebody else's finished project that I don't know where it came from, Jaron. Maybe you can fill us in on that. But it uses a very similar type of idea, and I thought that was absolutely amazing. I love Nathan Oakley's comment on this. He said it looks like the Starship Enterprise. And I was like, yeah, it kind of does. The left and the right little circles here look like the warp nacelles, and of course the saucer section of the disk. But whatever. Neither here nor there. I just thought it was kind of funny that he said that. So
yeah, I've got a huge folder of old maps that I've been looking at. So I don't remember where it came from exactly, but I think down on the left-hand side, doesn't that say the name of either the site or the brand? Something about the Future Mapping Company.
I don't know. Let's see. Maybe I can blow it up here.
And so yeah, and I don't know if people understood what you meant, but when you do swap the two sides, the sinu-molide projection says it's an equal area fusion of the
Moloweed and sinusoidal projections.
Okay, so when you swap those, then you've got the flights going the correct direction. This map here, we could look at. Pull it back out, Bob.
Okay.
Please do. Am I on or no?
You're on.
Okay.
You're on, but you're not presenting.
Okay. Nope. Okay.
So if we know that, like Max Egan went from Santiago, Chile to Sydney, and we know he flew west. So looking here, I was kind of saying, I don't know how that's obviously not going to work. But when you flip them, then all of a sudden you've got them flying west. And I don't mean flip them and leave. Obviously, you don't leave Africa there, but you flip them, and then that would move everything kind of opposite where everything is, meaning Hawaii would come down. But then you have people going the right direction. You have the flights are a lot shorter than we think. So obviously, there's much more to do with it. But I definitely think it is leading us in the right direction.
Okay, can you put the other map back up, Bob?
Sure. Let's go back to, gosh, where is it? There we go.
Or just the grid lines. Okay, now what is very counterintuitive about this map, and Jaron, you did the flip on it. If you look over here, Australia or Sydney, Bob, can you point to Sydney, Australia in the bottom left of the map?
Right here. Hopefully you can see me circling.
If you're looking at it, you're east. Actually, you'll travel east to west, but on the map, it feels very counterintuitive. So if you were to go west from Sydney to Santiago, show Santiago, Jaron, that's what you corrected over the ocean. the corrections made are actually, if you show Santiago here,
Right, I'm circling it.
you're circling it. And if you do, now do your flight from Sydney to Santiago, Jaron, and find the mistakes, please.
Oops, Jaron, you're muted.
Oh, well, there's none.
There is none. In other words, yeah, the corrections, when we get it mapped out nicely on that, you'll see, and if you look at like time distances, we're getting pretty close in here, flight times, and that between cities, things are really starting to line up a lot.
And then what you'll notice is if you do any flight tracking, and this is something a lot of the flights are tracked between South America and Australia. There's a lot of those flights that go back and forth there, but you won't find a lot of flights from South America to Africa and Australia to Africa.
Those are your long flights.
Huh?
Those are your longest flights. You're right. If you're looking at the flights, your flights to South Africa are your longest flights, not your Sydney to Santiago.
And they always have a connection, and
Yes.
that's why you've seen people before when you take a look at the azimuthal equidistant, and you notice that a lot of flights make more sense on the azimuthal equidistant. No, I'm not promoting that map. I'm saying that when you use that map, flights can take a straight line path, meaning why would you go on a globe from, say, Brazil to Japan, or let's say Brazil to San Francisco to Japan, or whatever? You're basically shooting way up the globe, then coming way back down. And none of those flights make sense. And you see a lot of that. They'll go from Australia to India, then to Africa. And so you don't see just the Australia to Africa. And that's because if you kind of look at what we're looking at now, the big distance would be up top, meaning Africa would be up top, above the circle here. And there would be a rare flight, you would hit the middle first. So you would take off from the right side, go to somewhere in the middle, and then shoot up to Africa. You would never go from this right side all the way around to Africa. So it really starts to fit what I'm seeing. And I've got a site that I use a lot called Radar 24. I've got basically a flight map and flight tracker, and watching these flights, that's why I'm learning. So you want to know where MH370 is, it's somewhere way up top here. And because they don't have satellite, and it's such a vast amount of ocean up there, that it got lost. They don't have satellites to track the flights up there, and it's something that they probably knew was an inherent risk the entire time, which is that, hey, if we ever lose a flight in the Southern Ocean, in between basically Australia and South America, that unless it's over Africa, we're going to lose that flight. And it happened. It was bound to happen that something happened on a plane. I don't know if the person fell asleep or he was trying to commit suicide. Whatever it was, that flight wasn't tracked and crashed into this huge, vast upper ocean. Whereas if you think about it, the way that they describe it, that's a small ocean at the bottom of the globe. That should be a small little ocean, and they still can't find that plane. The reason why is because it's a huge amount of ocean. And again, that's where you go back to Magellan going around the world, and it taking him 3 years, and he went 50,000 miles. Now, if they told us that, people would say, time out, the equator is 25,000 miles. How does it take twice that distance to get around? Well, it's because he had to go around the Southern Ocean up there, which is going to be a huge amount of uncharted territory that would have taken them a lot of miles in a long time.
Yes, very much. You're right. So, anyway, let me kind of give people a little bit of an idea of what's going on with these lines. As we have talked about before, and many people have asked the question, well, how is it that I can go around the Earth and and meet myself flying one direction and come right back to where we have started from? Well, again, this is because when you navigate, and I am a pilot, and I can tell you that this is absolutely the way we are told to navigate, we always default to the compass as being the primary source of navigation information. We even calibrate our gyroscopic instruments to the compass. But if you assume then on the flat Earth, and this right here in the center, this little black dot in the center, is Mount Meru, or it's the North Pole, and you have a compass that the needle is pointing towards it, if you take off and you start going west, well, what's going to happen is the North Pole is going to start falling further and further behind you. So in order to keep that needle going north, you're going to have to compensate with it on that compass, and you're going to have to make constant adjustments. So what you're doing really as you continue flying west, in order to keep that compass needle to the west, as you pull away from the north, you're going to be forced to go around in a circle so that you can keep that compass needle constantly pointing west, or conversely east if you're going in the opposite direction. This is what's actually happening when you're navigating. Now, when we look at this and understand that people are navigating via the magnetic lines of force, then what this map has done is extrapolated those lines out, okay, the lines of force out. So in other words, if I'm flying from Santiago to Sydney, or this direction, and I say, well, I definitely want to fly either east or west, depending on which direction I'm going. If we're doing that with reference to the north, we're actually going to be making a large arc up towards the top of the map and then coming back down as we're flying with reference to magnetic north, okay? So what's happening here is if you take that flight and you fly that normally, you would, again, be taking this extended route, which is a lot more distance. But what they're doing, and I believe this is actually what is happening, is when they are flying from Santiago to Sydney, they are not necessarily using the magnetic compass as a reference, more so as they are doing dead reckoning via the gyroscopic instrument on the plane. And when you do that, you forget about the lines of force and you fly directly from this point, Sydney, to this point, Santiago, and you have not gone with those magnetic flow lines. You've effectively cut straight across them, which significantly reduces the distance that you would have to be traveling. And I believe that the very few flights that they have, the pilots are either aware of this, or they're simply told, or they're simply following flight computer, which has been programmed by somebody, for them to whatever, I don't know. But nevertheless, when we plot this out on our map and you get away from going with the magnetic lines of force, you shave off several thousand miles across that journey, and you're able to then take the shortest distance between 2 points, which is dead reckoning across. Conversely, we have all been told about the lands beyond the poles, okay? And again, in this map, we've got Hawaii down here, but we've said that if you keep dead reckoning north, and I realize this is upside down, you will eventually break out of that magnetic construct and magnetic reference, and you will, oops, sorry, my phone's ringing. You will go beyond these magnetic constructs, and you will arrive at literally a land beyond the poles. Admiral Byrd talked about it. He said that there was a land as large as the United States, if not larger, beyond the Antarctic continent. Well, how is that possible if we're on a ball? Was he full of crap? Or he seemed pretty sane to me when he was doing that interview. Or you have the quote-unquote legends or myths or whatever of the land beyond the North Poles that Mercator himself documented, as well as many other ancient day sailors. And there's a lot of information in this. So to say that, and it's also, anyway, to say that we're on a ball and that we are confined to this circular orbit, when you realize that we're on a flat plane, then you have to ask yourself, well, then what is beyond these poles? What exactly? There must be something behind it. It's certainly not an edge that you're going to fall off into space, because we're not traversing through space as you would know it. My belief, and this is my belief only, and my opinion, is that we are on an infinite type of plane construct. Maybe the circles or the puddles and every other area outside of us would have their own sun and moon circling, just like in our construct. And people ask where they would be taking all this stuff that they would be allegedly quarrying, if they're indeed doing that. Well, maybe they're taking the precious material, and the elites are taking it to these infinite number of lands beyond the poles, and setting up some other type of utopian society for themselves. I don't know. That's my opinion. That's my idea. It may or may not be true, but I think that, you know, no matter what you think, if you think we're on an infinite plane, it would seem to me that it's very illogical to think that once we get to the edge, we're going to fall off into space.
That's the
That just
model they
doesn't
want
fly.
to see.
Yeah, that's what they want you to believe. That's for damn sure.